Welcome to the Late Night Gamecock show from Chief Sports South Carolina. Here are your hosts, Matt Anderson and Alex Jones of theBigSpur.com.
Hey, what's up, Alex? How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. You've been watching the Olympics?
Yeah, I watched a little bit today. Watched some of the basketball game, and seems like now they're on to the semifinal, I think.
Or maybe I think that was the semifinal game, and they're going to go to the championship. I got to look at it. I've been too focused on swimming, gymnastics, and then track and field, man. Like that 100-meter dash with Lyles was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. But happy to have everybody here tonight. I know that we're starting a little earlier than we normally do. Going forward, you can find this show at 8 p.m. on Tuesdays, which is good for Alex and me because, look, 9 p.m., getting off at 10, we got to shower, we got to get in bed, we got to wind down. It's just a lot better to do this at 8 p.m. So, Alex, how do you feel about the new start time?
Oh, I like it. I didn't mind the 9 p.m., but I think we'll both enjoy 8 p.m. much better.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time just kind of sitting around waiting for 9 p.m. to get here with all of you guys. So welcome into the Late Night Gamecock show. This is episode a lot. I think it's like 74, 75 episodes that we're in right now. So tonight is August 6th, 2024. It is a Tuesday. And we are in the heart of fall practice going along, or preseason practice, whatever you call it in different parts of the country. It doesn't feel like fall, but Alex, are you staying dry right now with all this weather?
I'm trying to. It's been crazy in Columbia, but in those coastal cities, Charleston, Hilton Head, Bluffton, Savannah, it's been nuts.
Yeah, so first and foremost, our thoughts, our prayers go out to anybody that may be affected by this. We hope if you are affected and you're able to watch this show tonight that you are safe, you're sound, and you're enjoying a little bit of Gamecock football coming to you on a Tuesday night. So, Alex, real quick, did you have a chance to look at the preseason coaches poll?
Yeah, I did a little bit. I think South Carolina's maybe 39th, I think. Was that where they fall?
Yeah. When you look at it and you have the also receiving votes, South Carolina started 39th in the country. But I did look at it and I just pulled SEC teams and Clemson, and I didn't go past South Carolina at 39th because clearly if South Carolina's 39th best team in the country, they're better than team 40 through 119, 126, whatever it is now. But Georgia is actually the number one ranked team in the country. And it's a good thing because South Carolina would not have to play Georgia this season until they reach the SEC championship game. So Georgia's number one. Texas is number 4. So get used to it. Texas and Oklahoma are now SEC football teams. Alabama is 5th in the country. And Gamecocks do travel to Tuscaloosa on October 12th. So at Alabama, they're 5th in the country. The 6th ranked team in the country is Ole Miss. And South Carolina will host Ole Miss a week before Alabama. So 2 top 6 games, back-to-back weeks, 1 at home, 1 on the road. So October 5th, Ole Miss will host the Ole Miss Rebels, and we are going to talk a lot more about that game a little bit later in the show. Then you have Missouri, who is ranked 11th in the country, and they will come to Williams-Brice Stadium November 16th. LSU, 12th in the country, they'll come to Williams-Brice Stadium September 14th. And then that team in the upstate is ranked 14th in the country. And South Carolina will head to the other Death Valley November 30th, right after Thanksgiving. And there has been a lot of talk about that game potentially moving to a Thursday, Friday start going forward. We'll see what happens there. Then Tennessee is 15th in the country. Oklahoma, 16th. The Gamecocks go to Norman, Oklahoma, October 19th. They go to number 20, Texas A&M, on November 2nd. Then Auburn is 32nd in the also receiving votes. Kentucky is 37th. Gamecocks travel to Lexington September 7th. And then Florida is 38th and South Carolina is 39th. So right off the cuff, Alex, what do you think about that schedule? Gamecocks play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the top 20 teams in the country, according to the coaches, which we all know is really the SIDs that are filling this out. But your takes on this, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina always has a difficult schedule in the SEC, and that's really going to be no different this year. But I think for them, it's going to be more opportunities for them. I mean, you got, I think it was 7 of the top 20. So if you got 7 of the top 20 games, that's a lot of opportunities to make statements and get key wins. So it's going to be a huge stretch for South Carolina this season.
Yeah, and you look at it a little bit further, and I'm just doing some quick math here. Obviously, the season really starts September 7th at Kentucky, and you can go back and watch Alex and I's show a couple of weeks back where we talked about the Old Dominion game and the Kentucky game and kind of gave a preview there. We are going to preview Alabama and Ole Miss a little bit later tonight, but looking at it, Alex, you have 37th ranked Kentucky. At Kentucky, then you have 20th ranked Texas A&M at A&M, 16th ranked Oklahoma at Oklahoma, and then 14th ranked the team from the upstate at Little Death Valley. But then you have LSU coming to Williams-Brice Stadium, Missouri coming to Williams-Brice Stadium, and Ole Miss coming to Williams-Brice Stadium. So we all know that the SEC is a tremendous bear. And having, and also that game against Alabama. But if you have to play 3 of the top 12 teams in the coaches preseason poll, it's better to play them at Williams-Brice, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not have to travel to not to travel to Death Valley or Missouri or even Ole Miss, who has got a pretty good stadium atmosphere. Like that's huge for them. And I'm just curious, what do you think about LSU being 12th?
I think that from here till the end of time, LSU is going to be ranked somewhere between 1 and 21st in the country when the preseason poll comes out. So I'm not shocked by 12th in the country. And look, we talked about it on a few episodes ago. They have on average the 6th best recruiting class in the country over the last 5 years. So it's not like LSU has a dearth of talent. But what it does mean is that LSU is coming to Williams-Brice Stadium, 12th in the country, and might be feasting on name and not what they actually are right now. And look, those words might come back to haunt me. I mean, I remember Texas A&M with Kyler Murray a few years back, and they hung half 100 on the Gamecocks in the opening game of the season. So I'm by no means saying that LSU is a cakewalk. They're not. But, yeah, 12th in the country. I think that Missouri's interesting too. Obviously, Missouri returns a quarterback that, I think he was either first, second, third, or fourth team. They only do 3 teams, and then honorable mention in Southeastern Conference. And they return Luther Burden Jr., who, for my money, might be the best wide receiver in the country. Mm-hmm. So when you start with those 2 guys, I can understand the 11th ranked team in the country. Ole Miss, we'll talk about in a little bit. Alabama at 5th is interesting to me, only because Nick Saban's not there. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Oklahoma at 16, A&M at 20, and Kentucky at 37. I think all of those are fair rankings for where we are at this point in the preseason. But there's a lot of games to be played before South Carolina has to travel to Norman, Oklahoma, and then having to go to Aggie Land for Texas A&M. So I think the schedule broke out well. I mean, normally the Gamecocks would be playing Georgia, not playing Georgia. Normally the Gamecocks play Kentucky and Florida, and they're only playing Kentucky this year. So it's tough.
Tennessee.
Yeah, and Tennessee, who's 15th in the country. Exactly. So I think this is just the new normal for Gamecock fans and for SEC fans, wherever they are. It's going to be a gauntlet every single season going forward. So any last words on that, Alex?
Yeah, just kind of what we just touched on. It's going to be weird to not see South Carolina playing, the Georgia, Florida, and Tennessees of the world. But, I think to not have to play Georgia or Tennessee just from a schedule standpoint, it kind of favors South Carolina.
Yeah, and it looks like that'll be the same schedule next year. I think they're just going to flip flop home and away. So we'll see how all these teams fare this year. We'll see what happens in recruiting. We'll see what happens in the transfer portal. I mean, none of these teams might look the same as they do this year in the preseason. But before we completely move off of preseason stuff, I did want to get your take on recent recruiting news. Obviously, South Carolina landed a commitment from four-star Kendall Daniels Jr. For some Gamecock fans, it might have been the worst kept secret in the world that Kendall Daniels Jr. was coming, but it took a long time for him to finally get in the boat. What's your take on that, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good get for them, and kind of as you mentioned, that South Carolina's been at the top of his recruitment for a long time. It was just kind of seeing how long was the commitment going to take and all that. I think with them, they just kind of beat out Virginia Tech. He had a top three of South Carolina, Virginia Tech, and Clemson. I think probably came down to South Carolina, Virginia Tech, but a guy that's 6'3", 190 pounds. He's a guy who kind of when you look at what what Torian Gray looks for in a defensive back. He kind of fits that mold. And, I kind of like his film. You really see some things that you can see why they like him in his film. And I think it was a good pickup for them to continue recruiting as they have in the state of Virginia.
Oh, I completely agree. Moving on to four-star Jalen Gilchrist, offensive tackle. Gamecocks were in his top two for, it seems like, 2 years. He did commit to Maryland over the weekend. I can tell our listeners, and Alex, obviously you already know this, that it was nip and tuck the entire way. I think South Carolina led for the majority of that recruitment. But sometimes kids just want to stay closer to home. And although Maryland is only 2 hours closer than South Carolina for Jalen Gilchrist, I do have respect for somebody that wants to make his own name. And, look, the Gamecock coaches are asking players to create their own legacy at South Carolina, and Jalen Gilchrist decided to do that at Maryland. I don't know how much more we need to say about this, Alex, but do you think this one's pretty much a done deal, or are you still tracking Jalen Gilchrist at all?
I think we'll still track him a little bit to see if possibly he shows up for a game this season and just kind of see how both team seasons go. Maryland and South Carolina, but I think we'll track it for a little bit. But we'll see with him.
Yeah, and with five-star defensive end Jared Smith, he committed to Auburn. This is a similar situation to Jalen Gilchrist. I wouldn't say the Gamecocks were in his top two for 2 years. However, they were in his top two, arguably his number one school for a little bit there. And as it turned out, he went to Big Cat Weekend, didn't come to the Gamecock Cookout. Auburn is on a tear recruiting right now.
Yeah.
And it looks like a kid from Alabama is going to stay in his home state and go to Auburn. Is this one you're tracking going forward?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same thing with Jalen Gilchrist. We'll see how that progresses, and kind of just with his recruitment, Sterling Lucas had South Carolina a really good spot, but as you mentioned, it's going to be hard to pull a 5-star edge out of the state of Alabama that Auburn really wants. And with the way that Auburn's been recruiting, they've been going at just on a tear recently. So South Carolina was right there, but Auburn just kind of came in late and got them, and we'll see where this one goes as well.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on it. I wouldn't say that either of these recruitments are something that Gamecock fans need to cross their fingers on. I'll put it that way. But we'll keep an eye on it. Gamecocks, as of right now, have the 30th best recruiting class in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. Currently sitting in 19 commitments, 6 4-stars, 12 3-stars, and 1 unranked player. That unranked player is a long snapper. And this is just the tough part. It's just the breaks in the SEC. You have the 30th best recruiting class in the country, and it's the 12th best in your conference. So, Alex, what do you think about that statement? And I'll let you run with that for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just as with the 14 teams, the SEC recruiting is going to be difficult, because everybody's going to be recruiting at a very high level, and then you add in Texas and Oklahoma, only makes things more difficult. But South Carolina seems to be kind of always maybe top 25-ish in the recruiting rankings, and we'll see if they can get back into that range. I think I'm not sure what they're at right now, to be honest. But we'll see where this goes and who else pops up in the summer who they can recruit for this 2025 class.
Yeah, and it's hard for Gamecock fans right now, in my opinion, because they were, the last year Gamecock fans got spoiled. They had a premier recruiting class, 15 guys. I think that, you know, 8 or 10 of them were 4-star or 5-star guys, and it was a small class. And Gamecock coaches kind of knew they were going to have to hit the portal. I think that's going to be the case this year as well. And look, NIL is a tough business at the moment because NIL is consistent not only in high school recruiting battles. I mean, there is a prominent offensive lineman that was looking at South Carolina that wanted $1 million guaranteed his first year. That's tough. That's tough to do, but at the same time, once you get through this high school recruiting class, you got to turn your eye to the portal, and the portal isn't, I don't want to say as competitive as high school recruiting classes are. I think that you can get players at better numbers and through the portal than you can through the high school class. But right now, there's really not much else out there, Alex, when you think about the summer official visits and offers that are out there. And it might be portal season for South Carolina. Now, Debo Samuel popped up at the Shrine Bowl. Pharaoh Cooper popped up at the Shrine Bowl. There are a number of players that are going to have good senior seasons, but did want to quickly give a recruiting update really quick. At quarterback, I think they're done in the high school ranks outside of, maybe a portal addition at the end of the season. Just got to see how the quarterbacks on the roster progress. Running back, I don't think that you'll disagree with me, Alex. Who the heck knows right now? I don't know of any running back that they are feeling confident about, or any running back that is, leaning the Gamecocks' way. But running back's a position that is the easiest position to translate to freshman year and sophomore year. So we'll see there. Wide receiver likely done in the high school ranks unless Malik Clark wants to revisit his decision to go to Florida State. Tight end, Mikael Skinner, he got an offer from South Carolina the same day that Malik Clark decided to go to Florida State with his announcement. Really don't think that these two guys overlap at all. I don't think it's an either-or type scenario. I think the Gamecocks have like Mikael Skinner as a tight end over the long haul. So we'll see what happens there. Alex, really quick, any update on Mikael Skinner that you picked up lately?
Not lately. I think we'll see where that one goes. Obviously, he's committed to Cincinnati, but I think South Carolina may have a little bit of pull there, just being guy who's from Columbia. It seems like there's going to be some interest there from his side. And kind of going back to the wide receiver, one guy we probably talk about is Jackson Rupp, who South Carolina offered. I think it was last week maybe, and so I think he'll be a guy that we'll need to track going forward. Him coming out of Christchurch.
Yeah, and that kid is like 5'8", 170 pounds, runs like a 4.2 40, 4.28. I think he was timed at Carolina's camp. He's somebody that I think that you just take at this point, regardless of Malik Clark. You got to take a look at him because he is very reminiscent of Ace Sanders, in my opinion, just the way that he can make people miss in space. He can run past you, all of that. So moving on to offensive line, they have one offensive lineman commitment. It's a 4-star. It's Shed Surratt. He's an in-state kid. They're going to have to find some other guys. I don't think any coaching staff in the country wants to go into the portal season with one offensive lineman commitment from the high school ranks just for depth purposes. So
yeah,
I don't know who that person is going to be. Alex, if you can shed some light on it, or if it's a wait and see. I think it's more of a wait and see.
Yeah, I think it is a wait and see. I'm not sure if there are any names out there right now, but we've kind of mentioned like it's always somebody that pops up in the summer. We'll see that happens along the offensive line.
Yeah, and then when you look at defensive line, Xavion Hardy's still out there, the number one JUCO player in the country, former Gamecock commitment. It seems like he might be more open to other schools than previously thought. But he's a guy that obviously has Gamecock ties, has connections to the staff. I'm going to butcher this name, but Joseph Mbachu? Batumchu?
I think that's right. I'm not even 100% sure.
Yeah. He's a kid that's never played a game of high school football, but just committed to Florida. South Carolina offered him. We'll see what happens there. Maybe locked in with Florida. We'll see what Florida does this year if the coaching staff remains intact. Linebacker probably done. I know that losing Jaden Breaker was a tough blow for the Gamecocks recruiting class. It was a guy that just switches commitment to LSU. Probably a diamond in the rough. So kudos go to the staff for uncovering him. But then, like, they got 3 guys committed, Alex. I mean, it might be, portal shopping, or it might be, if someone blows them away, they might take a look at them.
Yeah, I think when you look at the linebacker room too, you got the 3 guys you have committed right now. Then you got 2. You already got Fred Johnson and Wendell Gregory in there, who are obviously, by the time these guys get there, we'll be moving into their second year. So I can see that probably, if they find somebody in the high school ranks they like, maybe obviously they'll go that route. But I can see that being a portal route as well.
Yeah, and defensive back, I mean, they're still chasing Shamari Earls, formerly committed to the Gamecocks, committed to Georgia now. I don't know where that's going to go. I don't want to give false hope to any Gamecock fan out there. Sometimes kids get caught up in the moment and commit, and then when it's time to go public, they choose somebody else. And are you still tracking Shamari Earls at all, Alex, or do you think that's a ship that has sailed?
I think they're still going to do everything they can to try to get him back, but I think it's just going to be difficult being that, already committed here or to South Carolina once, and now he's committed to Georgia. I just feel like it could be hard to kind of flip him back to South Carolina.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. So that's kind of where recruiting stands right now. Obviously, stay locked into the Big Spur. The Big Spur is going to be covering this stuff 24/7 every day. Alex doesn't actually sleep. By the way, if you didn't know that, Alex stays awake 24 hours a day, and he just drinks a ton of Red Bulls and Monster Energy and keeps himself going. So if you're not a member of thebigspur.com, go ahead and do that right now. And it's the perfect time to do it because we're going to take a commercial break and hear from our sponsors.
I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Emergencies and accidents happen. When you're in the middle of a fire or water event, all you want is for things to return to normal as soon as possible. Resto Pros of the Midlands is with you. RestoProsMidlandsSC.com. Open 24/7 when you need them. Quality that is guaranteed.
Down here in the South, we don't always see eye to eye. While our taste in college football teams, or what sauce, if any, goes best on a rack of ribs, or what to mix with our Dixie vodka might be up for debate, we can all agree there's nothing better than a Southern tailgate. And like our favorite college teams, our ingredients come from small towns and big cities. They're grown in Southern soil, are crafted by Southern hands, and proudly represent the South in our backyard and beyond. So raise a glass of Dixie Southern Vodka to celebrate being made in America and raised in the South.
Oh, man, the building is on fire.
During and after natural disasters or accidents, there can be a heavy loss to property. Resto Pros of the Midlands is here to help. Open 24/7. Call them when you need them. 803-493-0170. RestoProsMidlandsSC.com. Quality that is guaranteed.
Welcome back to the Late Night Gamecock Show. We're so happy to have all of you with us tonight. And it is time on this Tuesday, August 6th, 2024, to turn our attention to the upcoming football season and continuing our coverage of what is in store for the Gamecocks going forward. We have Ole Miss. And, Alex, Ole Miss, I mean, we all know what the talking points are, but before we get there, let's look really quickly at the coaching staff. So Lane Kiffin enters his 5th year as the head coach. Charlie Weiss Jr. is in his second year as the co-offensive coordinator. Spent 2 years at South Florida and 2 years at Florida Atlantic. Pete Golding, big name. A lot of Gamecock fans might know him. A lot of SEC fans might know him because he previously spent the last 5 years as the defensive coordinator at Alabama. And then Jake Schoonover is in his first year as Ole Miss's special teams coordinator. So off the cuff there, Alex, Ole Miss has been making waves all over national media, all over SEC media. We all know about Lane Kiffin. He's a brilliant offensive coordinator / head coach. Charlie Weiss Jr. is probably the offensive coordinator in name only, but Lane Kiffin does have a guy that he knows a lot about from his time at FAU, his time at and then Charlie Weiss Jr.'s time at South Florida. But Pete Golding is the big name there. What can you take away from that? Obviously, Pete Golding and Lane Kiffin know each other, most likely from both of them being in Alabama for a bit. But Ole Miss is known as being an offensive team. What's your takeaway on Pete Golding entering the picture?
Yeah, I think with him, it's just, I think Ole Miss defensively, we know where they're going to be offensively with Lane Kiffin. Like, they're always going to be a high-powered team, and that's going to be no different this year. But, it's just, can they take the next steps defensively that could make them one of the better teams in the SEC? And, I guess we'll see with some of the transfers and new guys they added this year if they can be. But, it seems like they have the talent to do so.
Well, it's pretty interesting because I looked at Ole Miss's record over the last 3 years, and I do 3 years now. I used to go back 5 years. I'm doing 3 because this is the transfer portal era, and it's just I don't care what happened 5 years ago. Lane Kiffin wasn't even the coach 5 years ago at Ole Miss, but let's see, so 29-10 overall. In SEC play, they're 16-8 over that same 3-year stretch. But when you take out their 3 Vandy wins, they are 13-8. And I don't know if Vanderbilt wins count. I mean, I know when I'm on the Big Spur and South Carolina beats Vanderbilt, no one gives any credit to the Gamecocks for beating Vanderbilt. It's almost like, okay, that they're an also run. But so I'm going to do what the Big Spur does, and I'm going to take Vanderbilt out of it. In 2023, so last year in the SEC games, taking out the Vanderbilt game. Alex, do you have any idea how many points Ole Miss averaged per game in SEC games taking away Vanderbilt?
I'll guess high 20s, maybe.
Yeah. So Alex has the show notes. He knows, but it was a funny talking point. So Ole Miss has averaged 27.4 points per game on offense in the SEC over the last 3 years, taking out the Vanderbilt games. And on defense, in 2023, they averaged giving up 29.7 points per game. In 2022, they scored 27.7 points per game and gave up 31.7 points per game defensively. And in 2021, 30.7 points per game, gave up 29.6 points per game. So last 3 years, outside of Vanderbilt, they have scored 28.3 points per game and given up 30.3 defensive points a game. So, Alex, it seems to me that the magic number to beat Ole Miss is 30 points.
Yeah, I mean, looking by the sound of those numbers, it seems like it. And, with the game being a home game in Williams-Brice Stadium, you got to imagine, it's going to be a pretty electric atmosphere in there. And, it's going to be that probably helps the defense or South Carolina's defense. So, you got to think, there's a chance you can see a chance to a path to victory there.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I went back and looked, and South Carolina last played Ole Miss in 2020. That was the COVID shortened year. I believe that was the night Kevin Harris went for 5 million yards rushing the football. And the Gamecocks lost 59-42. But historically, Ole Miss and South Carolina have played each other 17 times. And the record is 9 wins for Ole Miss and 8 wins for South Carolina. And as we talked about, this game we played October 5th in Williams-Brice Stadium. And the Rebels are ranked 6th in the country. So, yeah, you look at it and you kind of say, okay, can the Gamecocks score 31 points? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just another interesting little thing. I think it's kind of crazy that Ole Miss hadn't been to Williams-Brice since 2009. Yeah, I know with the new schedule format and all that, but I think it's just kind of wild that it's been that long since they played in Williams-Brice Stadium.
Oh, it's absolutely crazy. But I mean, the big storyline for this game will be Antoine, some like to call him Juice Wells, will be returning to South Carolina. We all talked about this on this show, on every Gamecock show, on every Gamecock message board about Juice Wells last year and playing, not playing, why he didn't play, why he chose to transfer. We're not going to get into that tonight because that story's been told. But Rashad Amos is also on the roster for the Ole Miss Rebels. Looking at it, Ole Miss has made waves in the offseason. They brought in the number 1 transfer portal class in the country, brought in 25 players in the transfer portal class. And then I believe they brought in another 22 players in the recruiting class. So 47 of 85 scholarship players for Ole Miss are new faces to the program. On the face of it, I look at it and I say, well, let's see if this works.
Yeah, right. Because having that many players, you got to build chemistry with each other. I think it's probably good that South kind of gets them towards the first. I guess this would be a little bit past the first half of this, or a little past the first 4 games. But it'd be good to get them early in the season compared to late when they're going to have a pretty good chance of being pretty meshed together and good working well.
Yeah, and I think I saw a comment earlier that talked about love having LSU early in the schedule. And I think, mid-October is a great time to get Ole Miss as well. Theoretically, they're strong on offense, but that's one of the reasons I went back and did the math, because I was looking through their last couple of years and saying, okay, well, I see a lot of 70 points. I see a lot of 60 points, a lot of 50 points. And then I looked at it and I was like, okay, well, let's take Mercer out of it. Let's take Vanderbilt out of it. Let's actually look what they do against, just the average SEC team, not even the median, when you take, Vanderbilt and the Mercers of the world out of the equation. The big question right now is, they don't show that they are elite against SEC teams. Does that change this year? That's the question. So Alex, I know you put a preview article out. What are things that you're thinking about right now when it comes to Ole Miss? I think coming into Williams-Brice, Juice Wells, Juice. And look, I don't like to get into like political rhetoric or anything like that, but I do know that there will be some headhunting for Juice Wells in that game.
Yeah, I think obviously that, and then going and looking at this team, offensively to bring it back one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC and really the country in Jackson Dart, who threw for a little over 3,000 yards last year. But I think the biggest key for the team against Ole Miss would be just defensively, because they got a ton of wide receivers that they're going to be able to. He's got multiple weapons. You got you think of Trey Harris, who's a guy who led the team in receiving last year. They got Jordan Watkins back. They got at tight end, they got Caden Preescorn, who had, I think it was just over 400 yards receiving last year. And then throw that in with Antoine Wells and some of the other guys they've added. They're going to be a threat offensively, and you're going to have to be able to either get to the quarterback or obviously you got to cover these guys because they got a ton of weapons, including a guy they just added, I think, from Utah State just a couple of weeks ago in the transfer portal.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so they got a ton of talent offensively.
Yeah, and Lane Kiffin, for whatever reason, I didn't pull Lane Kiffin's record against the Gamecocks. I feel like it's probably pretty good. I know that I spent my 21st birthday in Knoxville, and that was the Halloween game, and they wore all black, and they changed to all orange or vice versa. It was a tough time to be a new 21-year-old. But yeah, I don't know what to take about Ole Miss. I'm looking at the schedule right now, and we're going to talk about Alabama in just a moment. But there is an opportunity for 5-0 start for the Gamecocks. And I think that if you took any other team similar to the Gamecocks in the SEC and gave them this schedule, there is an opportunity for 5-0. So we'll give our predictions in a later episode. We're just telling you about the teams as we know them right now.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say we'll learn if there's like a really good chance of that with that week 2 Kentucky game, because if you find a way to go to Lexington and come out with a win, like you gotta like your chances to be able to at least find a way to have that opportunity to be 5-0.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, you have the Kentucky game on the road, and then you have Akron, I believe, or LSU. But I mean, you have 2 wins guaranteed. And then Kentucky and LSU are the swing games there at 4-0. And 4-0, you're staring Ole Miss straight in the face at home. Going to be a raucous environment. So we'll see. The next team, and look, I didn't do crazy deep dive into Alabama just because I don't know. Here's what I can tell you. And Alex, feel free to disagree with anything I'm about to say, but Nick Saban is gone from Alabama. He turns the keys to the castle over to Kalen DeBoer. DeBoer spent his last 2 years at Washington, most notably going to the college football championship last year and finishing runner-up to Michigan. Before Washington, he was the head coach at Sioux Falls, went 63-7, and Fresno for 2 years and went 12-6. So clearly the guy knows how to coach football and never had an amount of talent he's likely to have at Alabama. But Alabama has a new offensive coordinator, Nick Sheridan, tight end coach at Washington in the last 2 years, knows Kalen DeBoer well. Let's be honest, Kalen DeBoer is going to call this offense. It's not going to be Nick Sheridan calling the offense. And then you have DC Kane Womack, was the head coach at South Alabama before being the defensive coordinator at Indiana. So, I mean, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, pick whichever team you want in the country that's up in that echelon. Probably the most talented teams in the country, just raw talent. DeBoer did wonders at Washington, had a quarterback drafted in the first round, had 3 wide receivers drafted, I believe, in the top 4 rounds. No doubt he's a premier coach, no doubt about it. Now he has more talent than he's ever had, but he's also going from Washington and he is going to Alabama and the SEC, and he's following Nick Saban. I don't think Kalen DeBoer is scared of that. I don't think he takes the job without knowing that. I mean, the entire country and the entire world knows that Nick Saban is arguably the best football coach of all time. All due respect to that other Alabama coach from years back. So I think Alabama's kind of a blank canvas, Alex. What are your takeaways from doing the research on it? And I'm just going to let you talk. I'll shut up.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest and one of the more interesting things I'm looking forward to seeing with Kalen DeBoer is just how his offense, translates to Alabama. And I'm really interested to see how he works with Jalen Milroe and gets that offense working, because they, compared to Ole Miss, they have some guys they have to replace. Jason McCullough, the running back, he's gone. Then you got I think it was the top 3 wide receivers last year, Isaiah Bond and Jermaine Burton and Armari are all gone. And I think their leading guy who's coming back is Kobe Prentice, who was just over 314 yards. So they got a lot of people to replace, but as you kind of mentioned, Alabama always has good recruiting classes, and they brought some guys into the transfer portal. But I'm really, really interested to see just how his offense works at Alabama, and especially with Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen Jalen Hurts in the NFL, and it's crazy to think that at one time Alabama had Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts on the same team, and both those guys, if they haven't already, are probably worth like $300 million combined over the next 10 years. So the big question is Jalen Milroe that next guy? And last year Alabama won a lot of games with offense, and it wasn't defense that carried Alabama like it was under Nick Saban for a number of years. The last 2 to 3 years, it was shootouts and Alabama finding a way to get it done. I'll never forget the Auburn game last year. That was one of the most epic, comebacks, final 3 minutes I've ever seen. And now, it's like Coach K leaving Duke. What does Alabama look like now? And, the answer is most likely that they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. They're going to be Alabama. But we've seen Alabama go up and down over the last couple of years. And I think Alabama is one of the biggest storylines in not just the SEC, but college football as well. So, Alex, I'm going to do a couple hot takes here. I know that you have to run. You have a hard stop at 9 p.m., but we did promise the folks on the Big Spur some hot takes. So we got 10 minutes. Alex, we'll see how many we can get through. And if you have to run, everybody understands. You have an important media request from somebody from Alabama. So perfect timing. You're completely up to date on what Alabama is, what South Carolina is. So great timing there. So, all right, first hot take. And I just asked a couple of friends about this. I pulled some stuff off the Big Spur. If you want to debate this stuff, go to the Big Spur. I promise. Nothing that I'm about to talk about is not on the Big Spur in some shape or form. And you have the pros and the cons of all of these hot takes. So first one, and we're going to start off hot, Alex. Shane Beamer is fired if South Carolina has a losing record this year. I'm going to go first, and I'm going to say he's not fired.
Yeah, I agree. I feel the same way. I don't think so either.
I think that, I think the Gamecocks are not going to have a losing record this year. So it's kind of a null and void type hot take, but I don't think he's fired. I now, if he has a losing record this year, and he has a losing record next year, I would say it's a daggum near certainty. But for right now, I think Shane Beamer can survive a losing record this season. Alex, this is right in your wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. Recruiting is tanking, and South Carolina can't win big recruiting battles versus the SEC and then Maryland, etc. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I know where that's come from, just being this recent run where guys going to Georgia or Maryland. But you look at the previous cycles, South Carolina's gotten guys from beating guys out like that from Maryland. Think of Dylan Stewart, Nick Harbor. So it's obvious that the 5-7 record last year is not helping. But I don't know if I'd go quite that far.
No, and I agree. I think that the 5-7 record's not helping. But I will say the fact that they are losing some recruits right now is a in the moment type feeling that a lot of Gamecock fans have. And look, it's hard to recruit to 5-7, but at the same time, I know the coaches on this staff, not all of them personally or anything, but I know their recruiting chops. And I think sometimes you lose a recruiting battle, and I'm going to chalk it up to that. So the next one, Alex, we got 8 minutes. I'm going to try and get these done. Are the expectations too high on Lenore Sellers this year?
Oh, man. I think he's got the potential to live up to some of it because, you think about what he can do, like his potential, I think what he can do on the ground can help him open up, some of the downfield throws and stuff. And, a lot of it's just going to come down to, offensive line. Can they get a run game going? So I think a lot of it that happens around him is going to affect this, what he can do this year.
So I'm going to say the expectations are not too high for Lenore Sellers. I remember Connor Shaw as a redshirt freshman. I remember Steven Garcia as a redshirt freshman. And the things that I'm hearing about Lenore Sellers, like if the expectation is the Gamecocks are going to win the SEC championship on the back of Lenore Sellers, a la Cam Newton, I don't think that's going to happen. But as far as being a very polished quarterback, a very good quarterback, and a quarterback that can lead you down the field to get wins, make the throws, make the wide receivers better, and use his legs, then no, I don't think the expectations are too high. And I've never said that about any other quarterback, but I've been saying it for a year for Lenore Sellers.
I agree.
So someone here says the offensive line isn't good. This is just preseason hype. What's your take on that, Alex?
I think a lot of people are kind of just in a, I have to believe it to see it mode with the offensive line. But when you look at what they have, I think there's some potential there for them to have a really good offensive line. They got a guy like Rashawn Lee coming back at center who can anchor the line, and a lot of newcomers who it really is going to figure out just in preseason camp who the best starting five is. And I think that's probably a pretty good problem to have when you're in preseason camp, that you got a lot of guys who you think are capable of starting, but you're just going to have to find out who the best five are.
I don't think it's a hot take. I think that it literally just is, people looking at it and saying the offensive line is stunk and I got to see it to believe it. But I think that there is more talent on the offensive line than at any other time during Shane Beamer's tenure.
Yeah.
All right. So, Alex, you're probably not going to be able to finish these. I understand. Hop off whenever you need to. The Gamecocks will beat Alabama or LSU this season.
All right, you go first on that one.
I'm going to say it's not a hot take. I think they beat one of them. And if I had to pick, it's LSU.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, I would say 1 or 2, and if I had to choose one, it'd be LSU.
All right, the Gamecocks will never win an SEC championship or a national championship.
Jeez. I mean, I think it's, I don't know. All right, you go first again.
All right, I'll go first. I think that it's easier to win a national championship than an SEC championship. And if that's the hot take, I do think the Gamecocks will eventually win a national championship and likely an SEC championship. Never is a strong word.
Yeah, there you go. Like, I mean, I think when you think about where South Carolina was playing really well, like they, I mean, obviously it's a different game now from the the early 2010s when they were rolling, but I think they have what it takes. It's just can they get there, and we'll see.
All right, so we're gonna do 2 more. We're gonna get it in, Alex. We're gonna get it in. I promise.
Let's do it.
All right. Sick of Shane Beamer sending out welcome homes when the kid doesn't commit for weeks or never does or goes elsewhere. Do you like the welcome homes, Alex?
I mean, I like them. I think, when you think about it, there's not many guys who, when he sent out a welcome home, there hasn't been many that just, it hasn't panned out. I think people just get tired of it happening than not knowing within 2 or 3 days. And a lot of times just, guys waiting on graphics or something.
Yeah, I think it's a hot take. I don't think it's a necessary hot take because at the end of the day, normally they do commit and all it does is build momentum on Twitter. So that's all we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
All right, last one. And then Alex, we're gonna let you run. We did it. I'm so excited. Gamecocks need to focus on the portal over high school recruiting.
No, I'd say that's a hot take. I mean,
it's a hot take.
Yeah. Yeah, when you think about South Carolina, the portal, like they've gotten guys who, have come in and made instant impacts, but they've also done pretty well in high school recruiting. And, look back to that 2024 class. They got a lot of difference makers potentially in that class. So I'd say that's a hot take.
It's a hot take. And what I look at is the Ole Miss portal and recruiting class this year. Let's see what happens. But recruiting is always the lifeline and the lifeblood of your program. You have to have a culture. You have to have players that develop. And if they leave, they leave. But at the end of the day, you got to start building that culture in that program. So, Alex, I know you got to go. I appreciate it. This was great. I want to thank all of the listeners that are watching on YouTube, on Facebook. We're going to try and get this in podcast format. Hope you guys can catch that. Thank you so much for giving us your time. It's the most valuable thing you have, and we enjoy doing this, and we'll continue to do this as long as we have folks like you supporting us. So thank you again. We will be back on Tuesday. Might have a special guest. We're working on that. And until then, I hope you all have a great week. Stay safe with this weather and join the Big Spur and come talk to us. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.